Welcome, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Louisa McGinn, Chief Executive here at Spinal Research, and it's a real pleasure to have you all here at today's webinar. I hope you'll find it really interesting and exciting. I've got a fantastic panel as well lined up to speak with you. So today's about introducing a really exciting new programme. We really believe it's got the potential to shape the future of spinal cord injury rehabilitation. Our mission here at Spinal Research is really simple. We exist to cure paralysis. And for us, a really key part of that is working with partners in the research and industry space to develop life-changing treatments like the RKX to people living with spinal cord. We really want to make sure that promising innovations are moving from the lab into field settings. The question is all about that first step. So we've recently launched a really pioneering program that's going to be looking at outcomes when the RKX spinal cord stimulation system is used in everyday rehabilitation settings. Clinical research has shown some really fantastic results, particularly with hand and arm function, and this program is going to help us understand what that looks like when we are out of a clinical research setting and in the real world environment. This is really exciting for us as well at Spinal Research because it is the first initiative to Recovery Alliance. So we're very excited, and yeah, this is such a big moment for us, and we hope for everybody that's connected to the spinal cord injury research field. Just quickly to give you a little bit of a rundown on how the evening is going to go. So we're going to be together for about an hour, so we will definitely be finished in time for anyone who wants to go to watch a football semi-final. I know the important one is tomorrow, but there is football this evening, so we'll be done around about 7 o'clock. We're going to have a discussion. I'm going to be introducing you to the panel, and then we'll be having a discussion together. And then at the end, there'll be time for questions. You can submit any questions you'd like us to answer in the Q&A function that you can see in Zoom. And we'll do our best to answer as many of them as we can. Also, the session will be available to view on YouTube, and we're going to be sending out an email with links and any further information that we think is useful after the session. So, to welcome the panel, I'll start with Dave. So we've got three brilliant guests today. First off, Dave Marver, Chief Executive of ONWARD Medical, which is the company behind the RKX system. So welcome, Dave. Thank you for joining us. We've also got Tilly Cumming with us. Tilly is the clinical lead at the Matt Hampson Foundation's Get Busy Living Centre, which is the first rehab centre that we're partnering with in this programme. So thanks for joining us, Tilly. And finally, Sophie Wilson, who's Head of Operations. Sophie's also taking part in the RKX programme herself and will be able to share some lived experience through today's discussion. All very much for being here. Dave, it'd be great to start with you. I'm sure many of our audience will be hearing about ONWARD Medical for the first time. Could you explain a little bit about the organisation?
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And thank you, Louisa, for the opportunity to participate alongside your other fantastic panelists this evening. ONWARD was founded 10 years ago with the sole purpose to develop new therapies for people with spinal cord injury. We've raised about 300 million euro to date, and the company has around 150 people. I think you'd call them boffins. We have a lot of PhDs in neuroscience and biomedical engineers, and we have more than 20 physical and occupational therapists as well. And we're all fiercely motivated to bring solutions forward to clinics and homes where they can make a difference. We're very proud that RKX is now out there in the UK and elsewhere. We're in over 120 clinics worldwide now, helping people regain function even years after a spinal cord injury. But we're not done there. After RKX, we are working to introduce additional technologies, including a fully implanted technology called ARC-IM. And indeed, there's a global pivotal study underway for ARC-IM, first targeting blood pressure instability, and then in the future targeting mobility, urinary continence, and other recovery targets. And we have a brain-computer interface enabled system called the ARC-BCI to enable thought-driven movement restoration. So this is the first, we hope and expect, of many new technologies and therapies that we, with your support and help and the support of stakeholders and partners like Spinal Research we can bring to the UK and elsewhere throughout the world. So thank you, Louisa.
Thank you. That sounds really exciting. It would be great to hear a little bit more about the RKX system itself. I suppose how it works, but then also why you think it's generating so much excitement in the spinal community.
Yeah, I can certainly comment on that, Louisa. I think Tilly and Sophie could maybe also contribute because they're right there in the clinic and they're seeing how people with spinal cord injuries are reacting to the possibility of the treatment and indeed the therapy itself. I can tell you that we've been out there for more than a year in the US. We started there when we got FDA approval, and then late last year we got CE mark and then a registration in the UK. And the response has been like really overwhelming and very for us heartwarming and motivating because indeed people are recovering the ability to move, they're recovering sensation, and those were the targeted benefits that we were pursuing, but they're also we're seeing some serendipitous benefits just by stimulating the spinal cord in a very tailored fashion on a regular basis in combination with functional task practice. We're seeing some improvement in recovery in autonomic function and other deficits that accompany these injuries. It is a completely non-invasive system, so it's a device about this big, sits on the tabletop, or it can hang on a chair. It connects to leads that are placed around the injury, so on the skin near the area of the spinal cord, in this case, the cervical spinal cord. They're just two standard leads that are placed there. And then there's some programming that the physical or occupational therapist will do to optimize the programming parameters for a particular individual. And normally, what we're seeing is that people are using it 2 to 3 times a week in the clinic for a period of 2 or 3 months. And then they're starting to now use the device at home. We do have in the regulatory approval in the label the ability to make the device available in clinics and homes where it's obviously more convenient. People don't have to make their way to the clinic and they can use it in the privacy and of their own home. So it's exciting. We're still learning about it because it's only been out there a year, but the response has been I think for us even more than we could have imagined.
Thank you. So, what's different about RKX compared to previous approaches to physical rehabilitation for people with a spinal cord
Yeah,
injury?
it's actually quite different. So there have been stimulation technologies out there for quite a long time, functional electrical stimulation, for example, or TENS. And so these I'll talk about FES or functional electrical stimulation first. So this is where electrodes are placed on the extremities and the muscles are stimulated. And when the stimulation is on, it compels a person to move. So the stimulation creates the movement itself. Whereas with the ARC-EX, it's really a sub-threshold stimulation. It stimulates the spinal cord enough so a person can volitional movement is involved. A person can want to move, and this enables them to move. Because we're using sort of the body's natural way of propagating movement, intention, and instruction, it then results in this neuroplastic effect where people are recovering the ability to move and to feel and strength and so forth when stimulation is no longer on. And it's that recovery of function that really separates ARC-EX from traditional stimulation modalities, which maybe can maintain range of motion, but they don't enable functional recovery necessarily. That's the big difference.
Yeah. I think that piece around the machine function, like the benefit being there after the machine is switched off, I think, yeah, that's really exciting. And it's true, isn't it, that people have seen benefits like a long, long time post-injury as well.
Yeah, so this, I should mention that during the clinical studies, so we did conduct a global pivotal study for ARC-EX, and the results were published in one of the top journals in the world called Nature Medicine. All of the improvements that were demonstrated were indeed, the measurements were taken when stimulation was off. So we were in fact measuring a person's improvements in strength and function and so off without stimulation at all. So it was, in fact, a functional improvement. And then there was a study done, in fact, in London at Neurokinex, showing that people who had access to ARC-EX therapy for a year continued to make gains without plateau. So we do think that there's an opportunity with ongoing access to the device, whether it's in clinics or in homes, people will continue to make gains. And they can also function on a focus on improving functions that are important to them. You know, in the clinic, you tend to have certain things you do with blocks and so forth, but at home you could use it to try to improve any movement or any function that's important to you. And that for us is exciting to kind of unlock those possibilities.
You. Um, Obviously, as I said at the start of the call, we exist to cure paralysis, and function restoration and improved movement and sensation is a step on that journey. Um, we're very excited about this device. Can you speak a little bit about kind of the excitement and the feedback that you might have had from people that have been using the device?
Yeah, it's as I said, it's very heartwarming and sometimes overwhelming for us. This is we as a group of people, my team works extremely hard, more than in fairness, I should have the right to ask them to work, and they do that because they see the difference that this technology is making for people, and we often bring people in to speak to the team who've used the device or have benefited from one of our other technologies and studies. And it's incredible. And I happen to be in the US currently. I'm at a meeting of all of our field people in the US. And again, they're all physical and occupational therapists. And they report to me that every day they're crying because somebody is moving in a way they never thought possible, and they see the way their loved ones react, and even clinicians are reacting to this. I mean, it gives me chills to even talk about it now. So that's what's happening, and we again for us it's just the start. We want to partner with clinics throughout the world to identify other potential applications for ARC-EX. We have what we're calling investigator-initiated studies ongoing in different areas like bladder, bowel, blood pressure regulation, lower mobility, movement, all using ARC-EX. We're not sure all of them are going to work. You know, some of these indications are probably better suited for our fully implanted program because that technology is available all the time by definition because it's implanted, and so we'll see. But we're learning, and we're certainly trying our best to make as many of these indications available as quickly as we possibly can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dave. It's really interesting, obviously, hearing about the science and the opportunity there and what you've seen already, where the device is being used, particularly in the US. As you said, it's been approved for usage there for quite some time. Tilly, it would be really lovely to talk about how you're looking at introducing this device into a rehabilitation setting. Obviously, your team at the Matt Hampson Foundation is leading the way as the first rehabilitation centre that's taking part in this programme with us. What made you want to get involved initially?
I mean, hello, and thank you for having me here. Who wouldn't want to be involved with something that actually has got a really decent evidence base behind it to impact on the lives of people with spinal cord injuries? I mean, like as a charity, we support primarily young people who've had life-changing injuries through sport. So that tends to be high impact. So, we've probably got about 75% of our beneficiaries have spinal cord injuries. So when I first heard about this, that was actually through a beneficiary that knew someone on your board, jumped on the opportunity to be part of it in any way, size, shape, or form that we could be, because that's what it's all about. And if we can then give back to the wider community by giving some of our results to you guys, so we can see how it works in the real world and not in a clinical trial setting, we would have been very stupid not to have jumped on that opportunity. Yeah.
You. So could you talk a little bit about how the ARC-EX fits alongside the existing work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've been doing is obviously selecting beneficiaries that fit the criteria for its licensed use, and then taking outcome measures that we take the same outcome measure with everybody. So at the moment, we're just doing a 9-hole peg test because that's fairly straightforward. But then actually looking at what their individual goals are as well. So, for example, Sophie, who we'll hear from in a bit, we're looking at her ability to try and play the piano again, which she's, amazing. She can do everything. But trying to get a better reach on a keyboard. We've got another beneficiary who really struggles with those fiddly little buttons with a bit of elastic. We've got, other beneficiaries who all have then kind of other upper limb issues that they want to be working on. So then using different outcome measures, and then essentially just doing what we've always done in our sessions. So we've not changed anything. We haven't introduced kind of complex protocols that have to be set up because people's lives change, and sometimes people can't make a session or they're late or for whatever reason. So we spend a session doing the outcome measures and getting the parameters set up for that beneficiary. And then we just crack on the way that we normally do. And we tend to work quite creatively. We're fortunate in that we are able to do that where we are. So yeah, I think it really put ArchiEx to the test to see what's it like if you're doing what you would normally do, but you have this extra additional piece of assistance essentially.
Thank you. So what preparations did you have to go through in order to get ready or to be trained in the device?
Well, so first of all, I had to go through a slightly intimidating interviewing process with you guys and provide all of our figures and how many beneficiaries we have that it could potentially be used for, and explain our setup. And then we had Carlton from ONWARD Medical come over from Germany to train myself and the 2 other physios that we have in how to set it up, how to use it. And we had 3 of our beneficiaries there during that setup process. He also delivered a presentation in the ArchiEx and how it works and all the different parameters and all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, we received really good training, and actually Carson has been brilliant because any questions that we've had since, I've pinged him an email and he's replied almost immediately with any queries. So yeah, but to be honest, for any other clinicians who are watching, much like with FES or NMES, yes, it's a bit fiddly to set up initially, but once you've got it set up and the program saved, pads go on, crack on, off you go. So yeah, it's actually really straightforward to use once you know how to do it.
Yeah, that's really useful feedback actually. Because yes, I suppose one of the key things is that it needs to be usable, doesn't it? Like you need to be taking something on board that is going to be practical and not turn into, a very expensive dust trap in the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, that is unfortunately true of a lot of technology in neuro rehab. There's lots of kit that maybe suits 1 or 2 people in your caseload that's really expensive or whatever. So to have something that actually, yeah, as I say, as long as you can be a bit organized with it and you know that you've got someone coming in who you're going to use it with, so you've made sure you've charged it and all of that kind of thing. But it's like with any other piece of kit, once you're used to it, you go, right, end of the day, plug that in, plug that one in, do this, do that, wipe that down, and it's just, it becomes part of the routine.
Yeah, for sure. It was interesting when I came to your centre last week to see the device, because as Dave said, it's it's small, it's very practical and easy to use, isn't it? So yeah, that's a really big part of it. What do you think the team at your centres found most exciting about all of this?
I think the fact that we have seen just in using it in a session, the change that it makes. So, you do, so if I take Sophie for example, looking at her little finger abduction, sorry, doing it without it on and then turning the machine on and repeating it, and you see almost instantaneous results. Now, obviously, we've not been using it long enough to see the carryover when the machine's not on, but even when you do turn it off at the end, you still find then we've got that little bit of extra movement than we had at the beginning of the session. And when I say instantaneous, I do mean it's literally within the next couple of repetitions of the exercise. And when you know your patients well, and you know that you've been trying that in lots of different ways, trying to be really creative with it, but that nothing's had as significant a result as quickly as that. So I think that's it's really exciting for the beneficiaries to see that, because that's quite rare to get this like, oh wow, that's happened in that short space of time. And for us as clinicians, it's like, yeah, I mean, we all get, maybe me more than others, but we all get quite bouncy and overexcited about it, to be honest. So yeah, it's great, and we're fortunate in that we have personal trainers and sports therapists and strength and conditioning coaches and yoga teachers and stuff where we are. So, you know, with some of our beneficiaries, they will also be wearing it when they're having their PT sessions, for example, because for us, that's all part of their rehab. So it's them going, does this assist with their training goals as well as their physio goals and stuff. So we can see it across the board, which is fab.
Well, thank you. I mean, of course, every spinal cord injury is different, and people are going to respond differently to using the device. How are you kind of handling talking to people about what the outcomes might or might not be when they start using it?
I think the big thing that we're saying is this isn't going to cure anything. This isn't a magic bullet. This isn't something that is just, you know, suddenly you're going to get back all of the function and sensation that you have lost since your spinal cord injury. We explain it that it just optimizes it. So it optimizes the rehab that you're already doing. That essentially it's like those nerve roots haven't been able to get enough messages through the damaged part of the spinal cord to actually cross their threshold to fire. And what this machine does is it almost lowers the nerve roots threshold, so it can receive quieter messages but get a bigger impulse kind of across that threshold. So it's almost like we're turning up the volume. The machine is turning up the volume of those messages that are coming through. So that's how we explain it, and we're very clear that, you know, we're hopeful but we don't know. And so at the moment it's let's try it. And then at the beginning of each session, it's asking people how things have been, and not just on, you know, the particular upper limb function that we might be focusing on, but anything anecdotal, as Dave said, kind of, you know, bowel and bladder function, or anything else they've noticed, or a change in sensation below their level of injury, or, you know, kind of any other new things or anything that's changed. And then keeping track of that stuff as well.
Yeah, of course, thank you. Obviously, we're very excited as a research organisation to have been part of something that has gone, you know, from conception through clinical trial into real world usage, and we want to make sure we keep learning from that. Is there anything in particular that you are keen to learn at the foundation as part of this process?
I think the thing that we probably find, which I'm sure many people who have spinal cord injuries or any neurological injury finds, is that it's trying to find something that reduces the friction in terms of the barriers to achieving certain things. And I think for certainly for me, I know if I'm doing something where I'm told, right, you must do this for this amount of time and this many times a day and da 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 da, it kind of starts to control your life, and you feel like you've kind of lost track of everything outside of that, and actually, you know, getting to see your friends and your family and everything else. So the thought of there being a piece of kit that you can put on, so obviously currently for us, put on in the clinical setting rather than in the home setting, and do what you normally do, it makes it so much easier to just use it in everyday rehab. I think that's the point I'm trying to make, not very eloquently, rather than kind of having to do this very strict, which obviously during a clinical trial I appreciate absolutely has to be done, but then seeing how it translates over into normal rehab, you know, and if using it in that way brings about good results, then that's massively exciting, because it makes it so much more accessible to everybody in terms of just being able to use it, that it's not this kind of vastly complex thing and you must do 5 hours a day 7 days a week of this one particular movement or whatever for it to give any change. Yeah, I think that's, and being able to give something back to the wider community, that's what it's all about, isn't it, really?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Tilly. That's been really useful. Obviously, having heard about the device, heard about how the device is being used, Sophie, it'd be really great to hear from you as you know, somebody who's using the device themselves. Would you be happy to just introduce yourself and I guess your background, your injury level, if you're comfortable sharing that?
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. So yeah, I'm Sophie. I broke my neck in 2018. So I have a C6 incomplete spinal cord injury. I mean, I was injured in a foreign country. I was in Thailand at the time. I dove into a shallow pool. And initially I was diagnosed with an Asia A spinal cord injury. Then went to Asia B after about 4 weeks. And I think by the time I got to the foundation in 2019, I was around an Asia C. So just as a bit of a background of my progression through the initial stages of my spinal cord injury, obviously a lot of things change, I'd say, within the first year. You see a lot of changes. Any movement that you are going to recover seems to come back in that period of time, which I know a lot of the time you get told recovery stops after a year. But in my personal experience, recovery hasn't stopped after a year. I'm now, 7.5 years in, and I still see functional changes sort of at least on a yearly basis. Like when I look back each year, look back on the difference in my abilities, my function, my strength, I'm sure I can definitely see differences. And I think my physios feel like that too. I've been at the foundation since 2019, so I've worked with Josie for 6 years. So her knowing my body pretty much as well as I know my own body, we've got a really great sort of partnership that allows us to identify when we do see improvements. So that's a really nice thing, I think.
That's great, thank you. So when you first heard that the RQX might be coming to the centre, were you excited? What was it that made you think, yeah, I want some of that?
I'm always interested in the research anyway. I'm always reading it on like whatever research is coming out. I want to stay up to date, not only for myself, but for other beneficiaries as well. I want to be able to support them in their recovery journey, whatever that looks like. Some people, like myself, choose to not go down any trials or research routes. And that's for a number of reasons, but mainly because of I'd say my mentality. Tilly will know, everyone at the foundation will know that I focused solely on rehab for about 1.5 years after my injury. And then I realised that I wasn't really living. I was kind of just existing as somebody who was going to therapy 5 times a week. And I didn't want that to be my life. So I made a conscious effort to try and become okay with my physical situation as it is now and continue to live my life, as well as keeping physio on the back burner. Like, I will never view it as giving up, but I viewed it as I'm going to continue working on things, but make sure I'm enjoying my life at the same time. Mm-hmm. The ethos at the centre is get busy living, and that is exactly what I wanted to do. Didn't want to look 5 years back and think, what have I done for the past 5 years? So for me, it was really important to establish a routine in my life. Like, everybody talks about work life, social life balance. And for me, that includes a rehab balance as well. But I also have got to make sure that my life is content and fulfilling. So initially, when the subject was in conversation that we might have the opportunity to utilise this, I guess if I'm being totally honest, I had a bit of a sort of weighing up, how is this going to make me feel mentally? Is this going to pull me back into this like rehab mind? Or am I going to be able to use it alongside living my life? And like Tilly said, that was really important for us as a facility to be able to use it and continue to live our life. It's like, we don't want people to stop enjoying their lives, to almost install too much hope into something that might not necessarily give the results that you want. So I was a little bit apprehensive at first. I did have to read the research myself. Like, I wanted to know the stats, I wanted to know the data, I wanted to know the risks involved, because that's what sort of settled me. And then I had to then identify, why is there some sort of barrier for me? And it was just this idea of reinstalling hope for something that I have not seen any functional gains for in over 5 years. So my hand function has stayed pretty stable, I would say, for 5 years. And straight away I found myself thinking, but if I could do this, if only I could do this, if only I could play the piano again, if only I could open a can, open a jar. And my head started spiraling. So I had to sort of pull it back and just understand that, actually have a conversation with my therapist, and I had to get my head around that this might not work, but also, would I want to miss out on the opportunity that it could potentially work? So it's been a real sort of whirlwind of just understanding my own head, my own mentality, and actually understanding the device as well. That's what's been really important for me.
Thank you. That's really interesting insight. Yeah, thank you. So I suppose going into it, you, I guess, would maybe trying not to have any expectations, and you're just sort of seeing what happens.
Yeah, and I think especially because a lot of the information that I'd read sort of says that you probably won't notice any changes for a period of time. So then the first time when we put it on, and I felt like I was seeing changes, I was like, maybe I'm just like psychologically making it up. Maybe it's not actually there. But both me, Josie, Tilly, Charlie, our other physio, we were all looking at it thinking, that is definitely more function than I normally have. So yeah, that was quite shocking for me, but I guess it felt nice. It's just that potential of thinking, where could this actually go? I've always said it's never just about me, it's about the rest of the community that have a spinal cord injury. It's thinking about how it can change people's lives. And it's really, really nice actually to see research and researchers putting time and effort into upper limb function, because a lot of the time it seems to be the interest is to walk again, the interest is this lower limb function, but actually the change you can make in giving people the opportunity to regain upper limb function is so huge. Like the difference in needing care or not needing care, the difference in being able to manage your own personal care, your own bowels, your own bladder, they're things that I personally feel can really change somebody's life.
Thank you. Would you mind talking a little bit just about what it feels like when you've got the, when you're in a session and you've got the electrodes on, how that goes?
Yeah, I mean, for anyone who's ever used functional electrical stimulation, it's that same sort of sensation. It's that sort of like underlying tingling. If it gets a little bit high, I was explaining it the other day as like a jellyfish sting, a bee sting. Like it kind of feels like intense tingling on the back of my neck. But that's the only thing I can feel. I can't feel anything through my arms. Like it is literally just through the electrodes. I was a little bit nervous at first. Obviously, I do experience autonomic dysreflexia, so I was just a little bit conscious, like, of looking out for my signals, my signs that something isn't comfortable, especially because my sensation around my skull isn't great. But yeah, fortunately, I didn't experience any autonomic dysreflexia at all, so there was no concerns there, and I never have experienced that with the device. So that's a really positive thing.
Right. Obviously, I know Tilly's already touched on, and as you've mentioned that, your hand function and potentially playing the piano again one day. What kind of exercises have you been doing when you've had the device on your neck to try to strengthen your hands?
So I've got a really good comparison because my left hand is a lot more functional than my right hand. So it's really interesting to see how my hands compare against each other. And that's simply just because my right side is more impaired than my left. So we've been working a lot on my lumbricals, so my ability to keep a flat bowl-shaped hand, as if I was playing the piano, keeping that arch through my hand. A lot of the time I will naturally go into this position, so it's trying to get my fingers to come down and my palm to stay up, which I'm not sure about you, Tilly, but I'm pretty sure that's decent. Like I'm happy with this.
I was literally just going to say, that looks beautiful.
It's a lovely hand shape. So yeah, that's one of the first things that we're trying to do, is just get me to be more comfortable, maintain a decent wrist position, a neutral wrist position, instead of dropping into there. So it's trying to keep that position and try and lift through that middle part of my hand. And that's obviously for the goal of being able to play the piano again. But also I've noticed it in sort of my everyday work life, so typing, I really struggle with a keyboard, as in a keyboard to type. My hand fatigues so quickly, I get so much cramp in my hand, so a lot of the time I will use my knuckles to type. So I've just been trying to see if I can actually, how long I can hold that for without getting fatigue, without getting cramp, any spasms, any involuntary movements, which, although I haven't seen yet much of a carryover in my functional movement through that hand, I feel like I have a higher tolerance for using my hand, basically. So I'm getting less cramp and less spasms, I would say. I also paint quite a lot. If I didn't have the background blurred, you'd just see all of my artwork on the walls. So it's that kind of being able to hold a paintbrush for a lot longer without getting cramped, because ideally I don't want to screw up my paintings. So it's just that carryover, what we were talking about earlier. It's not just exercises that are picking blocks up and picking pins up, it's actually utilising it in my life and how is it going to benefit me in the real world.
Thank you. You talked a little bit obviously about wanting to, benefit as well other people with spinal cord injury, and obviously it's great that you're taking part and we can be learning from what your experiences. I guess, is there anything else that has really struck you personally in all of this? Anything that surprised you or touched you or made you feel particularly excited?
I mean, I'm very lucky because although I've got a C6 spinal cord injury, I am very independent. I live on my own. I do all of my personal care, and I have done before this trial, before the pilot study, basically. So I've always described myself as one of the luckiest people in the world, and I can completely appreciate that other people don't have that same outlook because they don't have the same function as me. So I think one of the things that I think is really important for us to manage is those expectations of different presentations of different spinal cord injuries. You might have the same diagnosis of a C6 Asia C spinal cord injury, but you might present completely differently to me. So it's not looking at somebody. I mean, I did this very early on in my spinal cord injury. I looked for people who had the same diagnosis as me, and I thought I was going to be doing what they were doing. And that can be quite disheartening. So I think actually showing from Spinal Research, from ONWARD Medical, from us as a foundation, showing multiple different people, showing the smaller benefits, showing the smaller results as well as the larger results is going to be really important. It's not just about the people who make the biggest changes. It's showing actually the smaller changes and how they can affect people too. It might be simply going from being able to use a chin control to actually being able to use a hand toggle to power a chair. Like that difference is just as significant as for me being able to play the piano again. So I think as many opportunities as we can to share different stories, share different experiences is really important for us as a community to know what it means and what we're actually getting ourselves into, and understanding that the results can be very different. I think I did say it's so amazing to be able to see some focus into upper limb function because it is undervalued. A lot of the time people will see a wheelchair and they'll think that person can't walk, but they don't necessarily understand any of the other things such as bowel and bladder function as well. So I think for me, I'm really interested in seeing, firstly, whether it will affect my bowel and bladder function. Just for reference, I use intermittent catheters. So I'm interested to see if I get any sort of change in sensory feedback. My feedback basically is autonomic dysreflexia. So actually seeing, do I get any sensation back? Does anything change anywhere else, not just in the area that I'm sort of working towards? I think that is really exciting for us as a community. A lot of people with spinal cord injuries will say, if you gave me the choice of having my leg function back or my bladder and bowels, I'd choose my bladder and bowels. So that's how significant this is. If it has the opportunity to change that, I really would love us to dial in on that, because that is going to improve people's quality of life so much.
Thank you very much. I'd love to, I guess, following on, I suppose, from that sort of sense of hope and where you each think the spinal cord injury rehabilitation and function restoration, what that journey could look like over the next 5 or 10 years. I guess I'd love to hear about what gives each of you a sense of optimism about that. Dave, you've been resting for a little while, but the others have been talking. Do you want to take that first?
Yeah, could you repeat the question? I was actually looking at some of the questions coming in, so forgive me for being distracted.
No problem.
Yeah.
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, so obviously Sophie was talking quite a lot about, hope and what the future could hold.
Mhm.
I'd love to hear from you about where you're most optimistic if you're looking at spinal cord injury rehabilitation and function restoration, and what the next few years could look like.
I'm optimistic in a number of different areas because the early clinical research is promising. We just now have to do the work to expand the label, so that it can be more broadly used in clinics and paid for by insurance. But some of the things that are coming, for example, should everything play out well, include our implanted device, which I guess I'll hold up here. Yeah. ARC-IM, for blood pressure instability. Very keen to get that out there. And we have a clinical site in the UK, the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, working with King's College London. They should be up and active probably in September of this year. So anyone who has some interest in that study and who is bedbound or homebound or has difficulty engaging in family activities or work because of blood pressure instability, hypotension principally, please let us know. Sign up on our website for consideration for that trial. Also very keen, to Sophie's point, to try to introduce something that can address bladder and bowel. And we have studies that we're initiating using ARC-EX in bladder and bowel. We have an ongoing study in Switzerland using ARC-IM for bladder function that's funded by the Christopher Reeve Foundation. So we have a lot of trials around the world where we're exploring the use of our various technologies, and those that are most promising, we're going to invest in and get them through the global pivotal studies so that we can introduce them and make them broadly available.
Thank you. Tilly, have you got any kind of hopes for the future or areas you're particularly optimistic about?
I mean, I think from a clinician point of view, my hope for the future is that we can put enough weight and evidence behind it that it becomes available on the NHS eventually. So it's available to everybody, because that's what these things should be about. But obviously we have to get all of the data and the backing to it to then present, for it to then to be taken on by the NHS, understandably. Because if there's something like this that can make a really big difference to someone's quality of life, why would we not have it everywhere? So I think from a clinician's point of view, that would be my big hope, is that we can gather enough data to then make it something that actually is considered by the NHS as a treatment to have in our spinal units. We have Sheffield and Stoke Mandeville and Oswestry are our kind of nearest ones. And just thinking about then bringing it in. I know obviously at the moment it's only licensed for people 1 year plus, but actually if you sort of get in there once the spinal shock's settled and all of that sort of thing, and so you're trying to keep everything recruited rather than trying to find something that's gone a bit dormant further down the line, actually what change in results do we get then as well? That's kind of where my head goes with it.
Thank you. Sophie, did you want to add anything more than what you've said already?
Yeah, again, what Tilly said about it being available on the NHS at some point, that is obviously, for people within the UK, that would be incredible. One of the other things I know, we're already starting to look at home devices, but it's just, for me, I know I spoke a lot about it fitting in with my lifestyle. Like I wouldn't want people to stop living to access something, and a lot of the time rehabilitation isn't available outside of working hours, for example. For me, it was really important for me to go back to work and re-establish who I was as a person. So if I had the ability to then have a home device which allowed me to have the device on whilst I was playing the piano, whilst I'm cooking, chopping food, things like that, that's where I potentially would see this really improving people's qualities of life. Like it's not necessarily about getting access to it. Like you wouldn't have to drive an hour to have one session. Like it would be something that you could potentially do to support your own recovery. Obviously, there's a huge question about how that is financially available to people, but there even is still now, obviously, for us as a foundation, our charitable aim is to support young people seriously injured through sport. So we have to stick to that to a certain extent for our criteria of our beneficiaries, which means we can't just give access to everyone and anyone, and that's really unfortunate. And I'm assuming the other centres, there will be a charge for this at the moment. So one of my concerns, as somebody who didn't receive a case study, a payout, how is somebody going to financially afford this if it is successful, if it's not on the NHS? So that's where I kind of would love to see things move in the future to make this available, A, for people who don't have financial stability, but also for people who aren't able to access centres and to have it at home.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously I guess different access situations are very different in different countries, aren't they, Dave? We have had questions coming in around access to use and that NHS piece in the UK. I mean, do you have any plans or thoughts in that direction?
Yeah, we have to do it. This is critically important. It does no good to create a technology like this and then for people not to have access to it because of affordability. As you said, every healthcare system is different. That creates a lot of complexity for a relatively small company like ours, actually for big companies too, frankly. And where we are in the UK is that we've hired a reimbursement consultant, and we intend to work with local stakeholders like Spinal Research to put together a dossier and a campaign, an initiative to try to get NHS coverage. Now, part of that means we need data, and so we're doing things on our end to facilitate easier data collection on how the device is being used. And what the impact is, but it's certainly in the plan. And I wish I had better news, but this is a hard problem for any device company, frankly. But we're on it. We recognize the importance of it, and we're open to ideas and assistance.
Sure. Yes. I mean, obviously, this activity that we're doing, collectively now isn't going to be the thing in and of itself that gets NICE approval so that it's available on the NHS. And we do work in partnership with other spinal injury organisations. Some of them have lobbying arms. There's lots of places where we're kind of working in partnership to try to move the needle on this. But yes, the piece for us around doing, I guess like a retrospective piece on what happens in that real world setting and using that to support the activity that also your post-market surveillance team will be looking at too. Like I've been talking to them, so I don't think there isn't one magic bullet that's going to get this available for everybody, but we're working together to build a picture that will build the case to get that changed. Because yes, from our perspective as well, we just want this available as widely as possible, and ideally in spinal units. Yeah, of course. So there've been some questions coming in around, I know you touched on this already, Dave, but particularly around, I guess, the current parameters of usage and then extending those, both whether that's into paediatrics or into people with lower level injuries. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, of course. And I've seen some of the questions are specific to use with baclofen pumps, for example. So I'll comment generally. We're trying to expand the label, and we're trying to do it in the most efficient way to broaden it. Right now, use with baclofen pumps is a contraindication. That was in the initial label. There's no reason for that other than we did not have time to complete the testing required to demonstrate that the stimulation does not in any way impact the function of the pump. So this is one of our top priorities, and if all goes well, we're hopeful that contraindication is lifted within a matter of months, frankly. So that's something that we're looking at. With pediatrics, we want to try to expand the label. Right now, it's 18 to 75, I believe. And we want to bring that down into folks who are younger. We're doing our best to figure out the best strategy there because it can be expensive and challenging to run a trial, given that there aren't that many kids with spinal cord injury. So we're likely to do something there, but I can't tell you at this point where the age cutoff may be. And then the other indications or recovery targets, we talked about that already.
Thank you. And then, of course, there's obviously a lot of people from the UK that have joined the webinar, but then also people around the world in regions where the RQX isn't currently. Do you have any plans to roll it out more globally?
We do, and I can tell you that the team is very stressed because we're trying to add a lot of countries. Again, for a company our size, we're being quite ambitious. Many companies only commercialize in the US or only commercialize in the US and Western Europe, but we have a whole plan to extend this to countries around the world in waves. So more to come, but I can tell you that because we're a mission-driven company, access is very, very important to us, and so I would expect a lot of progress here over the next 6 months.
Great, thank you. Some questions are coming obviously about length of time since injury. As I think I said earlier on the call, I know that there were people in both the trial that we conducted here in the UK and then the Uplift trial in the States. There were people that had had a wide variation of time since injury. Tilly, do you have a sense of the kind of, I guess, what's a length of time since injury and that what kind of injury profile you're going to be seeing with people that you're working with on this?
I mean, generally, the people that come to us, the beneficiaries that come to us, are relatively newly discharged from hospital, and because our kind of foundation is set up to help people find a new way through a life that suddenly looks quite different than they anticipated. We tend to have people coming in slightly earlier on in their journey, for want of a better word, without making it sound like X Factor. So yeah, but we have beneficiaries who have been injured. Our Hambo, so yes, he's in Asia A, but our founder has been injured for 21 years this year. So for me, actually, part of the excitement of exploring it is being able to use it on people who have been injured for different periods of time. And as I said earlier, at the moment, it's licensed for people who are chronic, i.e., 1 year plus post injury. But I think in time it would be quite exciting to see how it might work in the slightly more subacute phase as well, when they are in, kind of spinal rehab centres. So yeah, I think for us it's more likely to be used on people who are perhaps 1 to 4 years post injury. But in terms of the profile of people that we've got that we're using it on now, it's anything between 1 year to sort of 15, 16 years post injury. And we just want to see what happens.
And Louisa, in the Nature of Medicine paper, we did see responders up to 34 years after an injury. So we don't know what the outer boundary really is, but we do have peer-reviewed published data suggesting it's in the third decade.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. You did talk, Dave, earlier about the device being licensed for home use. Is that just in the States or is that in the UK as well?
Also in the UK and Europe. So if somebody has the means to purchase it, they could do that now. The only requirement is that the home use be paired with a clinic device where their programming parameters are established by a professional like Tilly or Sophie. So it's a rather the pathway, as it's in most places, that's currently being followed is that a person would first get some experience with the device in a clinic, and they would learn how to use it, and their programming parameters would be established, and maybe their loved one or caregiver would also learn how to use it and how to put the leads on and so on, and then they would buy a personal device which is easily paired and programmed with the professional device just with scanning a QR code, and then they can take it home. So I think one of the questions is about the price in the UK for a personal use device, and it's 22,500 pounds. So it's available today.
Thank you. There's also some questions obviously have come in around where devices are available, because obviously, we are partnering with 4 centres initially, but there are of course other centres across the UK that have purchased the device as well. As part of the follow-up for this session, we're going to be sending out an email that will have some useful links for things like, information on ONWARD, on how to purchase the device, and also where the devices are placed. There's a device finder tool, isn't there, Dave? On
There
your
is. There's a
website.
center finder on the website with a map, and you can quickly find which centers offer ARC-EX near you. And the UK, I think, currently has 7 clinics that have ARC-EX. So leading the way in Europe. I'm still calling UK in Europe, forgive me, but leading the way, thanks in a large part due to your leadership, Louisa, and Spinal Research.
Thank you. So yes, we obviously, as I said, we're working with other partners. We're going to be sharing more information about that as things progress. Matt Hampson Foundation is the first. So yes, we are keen to get at this stage under the parameters that we've talked about around the licensing, and then the fact that it isn't available on the NHS. We still do want to support getting it out to across the UK. And, a big part of that data collection process is about understanding what happens in a real world setting. So this is very deliberately not a clinical trial. This is about in a real world setting with much wider parameters around usage, around, injury profile, all of that piece that we're gathering real world information, which our partner clinics are going to be gathering and then sharing with us as part of a retrospective study, so that over a longer period of time we can see what happens. So yes, it's very exciting for us. I think, all of you have talked about the emotional side of this as well. I think for me, personally, and for the rest of the team here at Spinal Research, to be part of a team that's bringing this device to people that is, going to help, as Sophie said, potentially have a really big impact on quality of life, and give that sense of hope as well. That's really special to all of us here. So we are loving working with all of you on this as well.
Thank you, Louisa. Also, in the materials that we'll send out after the call, we have a website where people can express their interest in participating in an ongoing clinical study, whether it's the one for blood pressure in London or the one for urinary incontinence or mobility in Switzerland or elsewhere. So that's a resource for those of you who want to seek out some of the emerging indications that are showing promise.
Great. Thank you. It's just coming up to 7 o'clock, so I think we can leave it there. Thank you everyone so much for coming and for all the questions that we've submitted. We haven't been able to get to all of them, but we picked out some general themes and covered those off. If you do want more information, please do email us. You can email info@spinal-research.org and we'll get back to you with more information if we can. But as we've said, there's going to be follow-up emails sent out that will have some useful information and links in it as well. We will, of course, as well be sharing some of the results that we see as our work with Tilly and Sophie and others progresses. So we'll be really keen to share some of those stories of people that are getting access to the device. So thank you all of you so much for your time. It's been really lovely to spend the last hour with you. I hope everybody watching at home found that interesting and useful. And yeah, please do stay in touch. We'll be having another session in about 3 months will be our next supporter session. So please do keep an eye out for emails and sign up to that as well.
I'm hoping Sophie plays the piano during a future session.
Wouldn't that be something? It really would. Yes.
No pressure, Soph. Don't worry about
it. Okay.
Hey, lovely. Thank you everyone so much.
Thank you.
I'll see you
it.
again.
Thanks so much.
Goodbye. Bye.